first chapter of my book in Malayalam, I was asking myself how much, if anything, was left out or turned upside down. Because I was told yesterday that certain things in Malayalam, especially anything of mainly sexual nature, is not acceptable. And I'm sorry to say that there is quite a lot of that in my book, My Father's Dreams. But that is probably not the reason I'm standing here today. I have here a lecture that I prepared for the King of Sweden quite some years ago when I accompanied the President of Slovenia during an official visit to the King of Sweden, and I think it's still relevant after quite a number of years. So if you will allow me, I will read it to you. And I also ask you, one of you, to put up his or her hand when you feel that you've had enough and that you're getting bored. So, obviously I have to start with ladies and gentlemen, and that includes those who are on the way to becoming ladies and gentlemen, because I see that there are quite a few young ladies and young men among you. Over the last 3 decades, the world as a place of values and meanings has lost its content. And so in this emptiness, all big important words sound hollow, naive, out of sync with the spirit of the times, almost like a parody of their meaning. Over the last 30 years, the world of vertical values has tipped over and become horizontal. In such a world, only that which is dangerous can stand out from the crowd, and only for as long as it brings someone a profit. In such a world, the hero of the masses can be someone like the now retired soccer player David Beckham. I'm sure you've heard of him. Somewhere I read the shortest summary of the history of mankind, from Buddha to Beckham. But someone who, for instance, invents an effective drug against all forms of cancer, if and when someone invents such a thing, cannot become a hero of the masses. In a horizontal world, quality is increasingly a synonym for media quantity. What is spoken and written about is ipso facto good. A world without content. A world in which form and forms prevail. Why should we delve into the spiritual culture and faith and philosophy of other nations if the majority of us, including ever more of those who are educated, are happy with common sense? Why should we strive, torture ourselves and others, dig beneath the surface, when, according to Andy Warhol, the surface is all there is? It is more comfortable and elegant to remain on the surface, where the world has changed into global shopping center, where everything is marked with a price and laid out on low shelves, easily accessible to everyone, even mental wolves. Not only material things, but also ideas, philosophy, art, religion, not to mention the meaning of life. Sale, the meaning of life at half price. I'm convinced that no recent inventions have more fatally deformed the human spirit than the remote control and the The remote turns us into neurotics whose concentration fades even after a minute of watching one of the 150 television channels now available. Then we succumb to a tantrum of channel hopping, as if we hope to find on at least one of these channels something made specially and hardly for us. It's the same with regard to reading books, which is increasingly becoming page-turning. And supermarkets, at a price we are not even aware of, guarantee the illusion of equality, the dignity of the consumer. The customer is king. In front of the shelves, we are all equal. We must all stand in line at the checkout. The instant accessibility of everything to everyone is paradoxically the reason for the devaluation of most of what is accessible to all. Faced with such choice also of books, ideas, theories, therapies, films, music, television series, the opinions of everyone on everything, we are ever more inclined to turn up our noses at what is on offer. Spoiled and weary, we no longer find anything that completely suits us, in which we would recognize an exceptional higher value. Something that, if I express myself in a way least suited to the times, we would be prepared to die for. But the greatest paradox of our time, as we know, is the fact that in the midst of a plethora of everything, when something new appears every day, an increasing number of people cannot afford food for their children. And so we ask, after something has seriously gone wrong in the world, can even more go wrong? I try to find the answer to that question in Jung's favorite story, which speaks of the water of life that sprang up in the middle of the desert and began to water it. People came from all around to drink the pure, invigorating liquid, and life was fresh and rich for all, but not for long. For enterprising individuals fenced off the spring, they passed laws determining who was more entitled and less entitled to the water. Then they began to sell it. And eventually, the spring of life passed into ownership of a small handful of individuals. They were so immersed in their ownership game that they didn't even notice how their civilization was founded on water which was no longer there. For the spring had already dried up, the water of life sprang at a different, distant place. After some time, it became clear to a few people that the form of life was losing content, and so they went looking for vanished water. They found it. But it wasn't long before the spring of life's meaning in the new location was also fenced off, privatized, patented, reserved for its owners, and so on throughout history. What is that dark force in humankind that makes us feel we have to control, fence off, usurp, make sense of everything that is alive and good? The lust to reduce disorder to order, of actual life into abstract meaning, is not only a need in the mind of the individual. It manifests itself in art. Aesthetic reductionism becomes cliquish dogmatism. In politics, party utopianism becomes social bureaucratism. And in science, simplification of theoretical complexity becomes conservatism of ideas. Whenever we are struck by a panic desire to find a fixed place in the chaos, the left hand begins to destroy what was created by the right hand. But that is not the only thing that has always disturbed me in Jung's allegory. I was equally strongly influenced by the realization that we can give meaning to our role in nature and our attitude towards it only by linking together experiential fragments into a narrative whole, into a meaningful sequence, a story. Or, to paraphrase Ian Forster, king, queen, sadness, and death are simply words. But the queen died and the king died are words that give facts, nothing more. The queen died and the king died of sadness is already a story, which gives the events meaning and content. The meaning is in the subtext. The king loved the queen so much that he couldn't live without her. There is no need to spell it out. Actually, the message is stronger if it remains unstated. Stories must have a subtext. They must have an allegorical dimension which in Jung's terms connects us with the mythological foundation of the unconscious, or as Freud would put it, the subconscious. Jung claims that the role of mythological and religious metaphors is positive. It is directed towards the maintenance and renewal of life. For stories, be they mythological, religious, or literary, connect us with those unconscious forces that we keep losing contact with because of our outwardly directed awareness. Thus, by arranging experiences into a narrative whole, we not only create the recognizable and renewable continuity of our presence in time and space, but we keep reconnecting with archetypal forces which are not only the permanent foundation of the spirit, but in a condensed form represent that fundamental wisdom that has helped the human species survive tens of thousands of years. I think that this is running on for quite some time, so I will now excuse myself and finish the